I'd like to talk about what we mean when we say magic, because a lot of people have definitions, and it gets really confusing when you try to use everybody's definition at the same time. I think what's helpful is when you have a word in your life that has a variety of meanings, that it's really important to understand what you mean so that you're not pulled off into a million different directions. Now, if you look at the word magic, it does go back to some Latin and then some Greek origins, but where the Greeks picked up those origins are probably in ancient Persia with the Magi, which were a priestly class. They were a learned class, and they did practice arts that are considered wisdom arts. And they even made an appearance in the New Testament because, according to that story, because of their wisdom, they were able to predict the coming of the Messiah and the whereabouts, and they were the first on the scene. Okay, so those were the Magi. And the Magi as a phenomenon was not necessarily limited to Persia, although that area was where that particular priestly class was from. But if you go into other cultures, they have their own version of the Magi. They were the precursor to science back in their day. The magical sciences were considered scientific, and they still are by certain people, depending on how you're using them. So the difference between somebody that's a learned mage from an ancient type of tradition versus the superstitious activities of a lot of modern practitioners is night and day. There's nothing in common with each other. So this idea that that certain things are bad luck, that certain things are good luck, then none of that comes from true magic. That's just pure superstition. Magic, in a nutshell, is the idea that there are two worlds: the world of the physical or mortal, that which has form, and all form must die, must change. So nothing in the mortal world is permanent. So all form is impermanent. And then there's the invisible mental world, and that is the causative world, and that's where nothing dies. There's no decaying of matter in the invisible world. But the ancient wisdom is, and the way that magic works, as I understand it and as I teach it, is that harnessing the power of the mind is the way that you can have influence over the physical world. And that believing that the physical world has any kind of causative or creative powers is superstitious. In order to create change in the physical world using the mind, it's very challenging for most people to keep their mind focused properly. So that's why when we do certain types of magic, like spells and rituals, we use physical objects as symbols, powerful symbols, to engage and focus our minds in order that the mind can thus create the change that we desire. But it's the mind that is doing the magic, not whatever it is on our altars. Now, as we say, it's very important to respect those symbols, but that doesn't mean being superstitious about them. For instance, one of my most popular videos on YouTube, as far as the spell casting videos, is my weight loss spell. And that weight loss spell happens to use rose water. Now, does that rose water in and of itself have some sort of magical power that's going to melt off the pounds? No, it does not. It does not. So the rose water has no power, except for how it has a power as a symbol in my mind. Because my mind is also connected to all minds. The human species has a species memory, and that's called the Akashic Records. And there are certain symbols that when we can connect with them in an appropriate way in the invisible world, we can increase our power to effect change quite a bit, because we are basically joining forces with all the minds that have been working with that particular symbol. So for us, rose water is a very specific symbol in that it plugs the deep mind into that sphere number 7 on the tree of life, which is where Venus is. So then when somebody says, yeah, but I don't want to do rose water, that's too hard for me to get, can I just use plain tap water? And my response is, you can do what you want, but tap water doesn't have the same meaning to the deep mind as does distilled rose water. And even if you don't know what distilled rose water is in this particular personality, in this body, in this time-space continuum, the part of your mind that's connected to the Akashic records does understand what that symbol means. So when you can use that symbol appropriately, all it's doing is helping you to focus your mind in a way that's joining with other minds so that you can have more success in your weight loss spell. Now, can you do something that doesn't involve rose water and still be successful? Absolutely. It's not the rose water that's powerful. Rose water is not, it's just rose water. You know, it's nice, but it has no magical power. But as a symbol, it is very powerful. So that's why I encourage people to go out of their way to get the ingredients in whatever the spell is, because what that's doing is twofold. On one hand, you are using those symbols that have not only power in your mind, but Akashic energy within the group mind. And also, you're showing your deep mind that this is important to you, that it makes a difference to you, that you're willing to do what you need to do in order to get this operation done. So it's very powerful sometimes to go out of your way to get certain ingredients, but not because those ingredients have any special magical power. I hope I'm making sense. So when somebody says things like, you got to be careful with magic because if it's not grounded in a certain way, somebody can get hurt, I can understand where they're coming from. And in a way, they're right. In a way, they're right. It's not something to play with. It's not something to dabble in. But if you train yourself properly, and if you work magical operations in ways that are safe, you're not going to be hurting people with your magic. The idea that if I don't do something right, somebody's going to get hurt, on one hand, that's nice because you're being responsible, but on another hand, that is showing you a belief that you might want to look at, because it's not just magic, I'm sure, that holds that belief. This idea that I can't get what I want because it might hurt somebody is possibly something that's holding you back in life. And so what we could do is actually use magic to handle that belief so that you could move beyond it and start getting what you want out of life and not thinking that your success is going to take away something from somebody else. Because if you were to look at ancient wisdom principles, you'll see that the idea that your success has to detract from somebody else's success is erroneous. That's not magical. That is not true magic. True magic is a creative act. A creative act doesn't cause other people to lose something. It actually contributes to the good in the world when you start receiving and achieving the things that you desire. It's not that the paradigm that in order for me to get what I want, somebody else has to suffer, or in order for me to, you know, if I want to make new money, you know, if I do a money spell, then somebody else will lose their money, or somebody will have to die so that I get an inheritance or something like that. Oh my. That's not true. Because if you're creating something with your mind, then you're actually contributing to the well-being of the entire species by improving your thoughts, by expanding your good. That's how creativity works. That's how the mind works. The mind does not work by saying, ooh, there's only a certain amount of mind. There's only a certain amount of resources in the mind. So if I get something more in my mind, somebody has to lose it. How is that possible? Let's say you knew something. Let's say you knew something. You had information that was very valuable. Now, if you didn't share that information, with somebody that needed it, would that increase your knowledge? If you shared that knowledge with somebody, now they got the knowledge and they were able to utilize it, they were able to improve themselves, and you gave that knowledge away, did you lose that knowledge? Is that now gone? You can't use it anymore because you gave it away and there's only so much of that knowledge, and once I give that knowledge away, then I can't have it anymore? No, that's not how ideas work. Ideas increase as you share them. As I give an idea away, now two of us have the idea. It just increased. It increased, right? And so all magic is in the mind. So if you're operating magic appropriately, you are increasing the good of the entire universe every time you do a spell that improves your life. But this idea, oh no, you got to be careful with magic, because if you do something to improve your life, somebody's going to get hurt. That idea, for one thing, it's not true. It's not true that is the way things happen. And if that does happen, it's because you believed it needed to happen because of the creative powers of your mind. It's not that you used your mind to create good in your life that caused the problem. It's the belief that there needed to be that problem in order for you to have success. Only the belief itself is what causes the problem, not the magic. So while it's true that when you use magic to manipulate or harm another being, that you seem to increase your problems, that's simply because you're sharing an idea that shouldn't be shared. So again, every time you share an idea, it increases. If you're trying to hex somebody, if you're trying to curse somebody, you don't just curse them inadvertently. Part of cursing is projecting that thought of hatred into them. So in order to curse that person, you need to go into their mind and convince them that of the problem of whatever you're trying to do. So maybe you want to kill them. So you're going to so you go into their mind and you convince them that their heart's not working. Or let's say, or if you just wanted to break up their relationship, you convince them that the relationship is breaking, and that you convince them that there's discord in the relationship, or whatever horrible thing you're trying to use your magic for. So what you're trying to do then is expand an idea that is harmful. As you expand an idea that is harmful, do you think it's leaving your mind? No, we've discovered that. When you share something, when you project something in your mind, it doesn't go anywhere because there's nowhere for it to go, but it does increase. So whether or not this person that's your intended victim, if you're hexing them, whether or not they are strong enough to withstand your hex is not really the point here. The point is that you are hexing yourself by doing the hex on them. So even though they say, oh, you better be careful of hexes because what you do is going to come back to you ninefold, maybe it looks like that, but that's not really what's happening. The reason why it's a problem for you is because you're indulging in a thought that is an attack-based thought. And what you do to another person isn't going to come back on you as much as what you're doing to another person you're doing to yourself. Because all minds are joined. So you can't escape your thoughts. You can't, because that's where you live. So when we're dealing with magic, what we're trying to do is we are trying to focus our thoughts into a specific way so that we can actually have experiences in our world that we desire. And as long as you are contributing to the good of your life, you're contributing to the good of everybody's life. But when you are trying to use your magic to harm another person, you're harming yourself by virtue of the fact that you can't escape your own mind. The only time you have to be concerned with creating something wrong for yourself in magic is if you are trying to harm another person with it. And again, this is not moralism. That's what I don't like that about the Wiccan Rede and the right-hand path and all of that. Because the reason I don't like it is because it makes everybody stupid. It's like we don't think for ourselves. It's like, oh, well, it's a rule. I can't hex anybody because it's a rule. Well, it's not just that it's a rule. You can do whatever you want. There is no rule that you can't hex anybody. You can do anything you want. But you make a choice to act appropriately based on the fact that you want more of what you're giving. That's all. It's just common sense. It's not because somebody told you you can't do that. It's just common sense. So, the ancient science of the Magi, that's what magic is. The ancient science of the Magi. And it's not just getting things. It's not just getting money. It's not just getting love. It's not just protecting yourself. It's not just reversing hexes. It's growing in wisdom. That's why we used to call it the craft of the wise before that became out of fashion. The reason it became out of fashion to call it the craft of the wise is because somebody, I think it might have been Sybil Leek, inadvertently said that it was an ancient Anglo-Saxon term meaning craft of the wise when they asked what witch means. Well, witch comes from Wicca, and Wicca is an ancient Anglo-Saxon word meaning craft of the wise. That's not true. That's not what that means. But the Magi did practice the craft of the wise, and we do practice the craft of the wise. What we want with our magic ultimately is wisdom. What we want is happiness. What we want is joy. What we want is peace. We want all good. And we want to create that not only for ourselves, but for our community, for our loved ones, and for the entire world. That's what magic is for. And part of that is, getting your needs met. Part of it is spell casting, but that's not the whole part of it. A lot of what we work magic for is actually not to influence the physical realms. It's to grow in wisdom. It's to grow in understanding why we're here, what our function is, what our purpose is, how we can evolve as souls, how we can optimize that evolution versus retarding it, how we can look at our ego minds and understand them for what they are so that we can grow beyond a lot of our machine-like responses to this world, that we can grow beyond a lot of our ideas of separation and war and many of the things that have plagued the human race since the beginning of time. That's what magic is for, to overcome our lower nature in order to keep evolving. And when I say lower, I'm not talking about sex. The sex isn't necessarily lower or higher. When I say lower nature, I'm talking about the idea that it's me against the world. The lower nature is that I'm so separate and I need to fight for everything that I need. When in reality, as we grow in wisdom, we realize that's not the case at all. It's just a story we've been taught and that we've been propagating for lifetimes. In reality, the truth is that there's a place in consciousness where everything is peaceful, where everything is perfect, and everyone is joyous, everyone is free, and everyone is happy. And that as we grow in wisdom, which is the science of the Magi, which is magic, as we grow in wisdom, we start to not only catch glimpses of this world and this life, but we start to live there, at least for a few moments a day, where we can relax our bodies, relax our minds, and move into that actual world, which the Psalms call heaven. But it's just that place of perfect peace. That's our true home. It's our true home, and that's what we're here to find. And if we can at least get there a little bit every day, then we can be a beacon of light for other people, not by showing them things, not by necessarily even teaching them things, but by being a better person. By being a peaceful person, by being a person that has the integrity that's necessary in order to get good results from magic, that has the desire for peace, that has the desire to heal, that has the desire to share light with one another in order to increase light. And that's going to help other people because you will be a beacon of light for them, and they won't necessarily know. They won't necessarily know what's going on, but they will be better because you were there. Now, when you're looking at inner mysteries and of what magic is all about, I mean, there's all kinds of magical lodges that deal with the great work, as it's called in the Western esoteric tradition, and the great work meaning the reunification with your soul, the overcoming of your ego, and the sharing of light with others, so that light increases on the earth, light increases within the mind of this species, and we become more and more aware of who we really are, rather than this illusion of a warring separate species. So that's what the Magi were all about. That's why they were all excited about Jesus, is because they saw the next the next age coming. You know, it wasn't so much that it was this particular Messiah, but it's like, okay, here's the next age. That was the age of Pisces. Well, we had one of those things just this past winter solstice. We had one of those conjunctions that had the great star, you know, the great Christmas star. We had one just recently, and that's ushering in the next age. And so all of us Magi noticed that, oh, there's a new age now. We're coming into the age of Aquarius. So what's the new religion? The new religion is the religion of you. The new religion is the religion, not you as an ego, but you as a soul. It's your becoming. You know, so using that magic to find your function, to find your purpose, in order that you can fully function in this new age. And this new age of Aquarius is going to be very, very different from the age of Pisces. It's going to be very different from the age of Pisces. Yes, part of it's going to have a lot of technology. A lot of it's going to be, you know, have a lot of science, because that's what Aquarius is all about. But there's also the humanitarian aspect of Aquarius. There's also the forgiving aspect of Aquarius. So there's a lot of good. There's a lot of the enlightenment of Aquarius. That's what Aquarius is all about, is enlightenment and relieving suffering, and doing it in a scientific way, in a non-superstitious manner. That's what Aquarius is all about. And so as Magi, we have to follow that light. We have to follow that guiding star that is leading us into this new age. So yes, part of magic is practical magic. Part of it is natural magic. Part of it is getting our needs met and changing circumstances and taking care of things. But that's just so that we can get back to work. That's not the end in and of itself, is to make the money, or to get the mate, or to heal the disease. That's just a stepping stone. That's just so that we just use magic for those things, so that they're not such a long-term distraction for us. The ultimate goal of our magic is to get back in tune with our function here, why we're here, what we're supposed to do, what our essential nature is. Because you have a function, according to ancient wisdom, that is unique, that nobody else can fill. And that's why you're here. And so magic is just a way that you can help yourself to find that function, so that you can fulfill that function. Because if you're living your function, then you're going to be happy, and everyone will benefit from it. That's the whole reason why we do it. It's not just so that we can have power over other people. It's not just so that we can make $1 million. A lot of people come to magic for, and it's really tragic, actually, because they come to magic with this idea of, my life is so awful, everything is so awful, this is my last-ditch effort, what am I going to do, what am I going to do, please help me, please help me, please help me. And I always have to remind those people that, well, the first thing we got to do is change those thoughts. Whatever you put into magic is exactly what you're going to get out of it. It's just how it is. So if you come with a lot of, you're going to get a lot of reasons to go, So we got to change those thoughts, right? So a lot of people come to magic as a last-ditch effort because their lives are out of control, and a lot of times they're very sorely disappointed with the results because of the way they approach it in the first place. So that's one of the first things we do when people come to the craft is okay. First of all, we got to start from square one. We got to teach you how to relax. We got to teach you how to ground and center. We got to teach you how to purify your aura. We got to teach you how to focus your mind. Because until we get some of the basics out of the way, you trying to cast spells is probably not the best idea. Not today. You know, it's not because we're trying to withhold information. It's because too much too soon is not going to do anything except for reinforce their problems. And that's not what we want with our magic. A lot of times when people want, crazy omens They really want the crazy omens. I'll tell you, I've had some crazy-ass omens in my life. And the only time I have crazy-ass omens in my life is when I'm really being dense, is when I'm really being shut off to my inner guidance. Inner guidance is usually very subtle and very obvious and very wise and very peaceful. By the time you get to crazy omens, it's because you haven't been listening. And so you don't want more crazy omens. That's the first thing. People want crazy omens. They want really big manifestations. They want real dramatic things. But I try to remind people, you don't want that. You don't want that. If you're getting those things, it's usually because you're so far removed from your good that once you finally got in touch with that inner power and you got some response, it needed to pull you so dramatically off your path that it needed either that big omen or that big manifestation. And it is fun. I understand it is fun when we have those big things happen. But remember that those are not necessarily a sign that everything's going right. It's usually when they're big, giant, crazy things that happen, it's usually a sign that you were really on the wrong path and that you needed to be changed. You want to get to the point where all your magic happens very subtly. Very subtly. You want to get to the point where your magic starts to manifest in ways that it just seems like it would have happened anyway. It just seems like it would have happened anyway. That's the best way, because that means that you're on the right path. It means that you're on the right path. And a lot of people really misunderstand that, and they want to go for the big demonstrations. They want to go for the big omens. They want to go for the crazy stuff because they think that means that their magic is really working. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. If you get some of those things, it's fine. It's not that you shouldn't. It's not that you should say, "Oh no, I don't want that." It's fine if it happens. But what it means is that you were really on the wrong path and that you got pulled way over very quickly. And so your goal is to get on the right path and stay on the right path so you don't need those big manifestations like that anymore. The opposite of what a lot of people think. Now, the superstitions are usually what cause people to not have any success in their magic, any success at all in their magic. When we do omens in magic, usually, we have very clear-cut, predetermined, defined parameters. That means, like, for instance, if I'm doing a spell with a particular angel, I look at their particular symbols, and I say, okay, so if I see any of these symbols, I have to take note because I'm working on a spell with this particular angel, and that's going to be our method of communicating. So I'm going to look for these symbols specifically. And if it's not one of these symbols, I'm not going to make it up. I'm just going to leave it alone. That's not superstitious anymore because you've given yourself parameters. You've given yourself really well-defined parameters so that you have a means of communicating with whatever that angelic force is or whatever that sphere on the tree of life. Same thing with things like tarot cards. The cards don't have any power. They're not. There's just cards. People are like, oh, you got to sleep with them under your pillow, and you can't let anybody touch them because of the vibrations. I can take a brand new pack of cards that I've never touched before. I could take an antique pack of cards that 1 million people besides me have touched before and give the same accurate reading with those cards as with one of my cards that I've been using for years, with one of my decks that I've been using for years. Never, ever have I had any difference. I can take any pack of cards, whether it's a pack of playing cards from a casino or one of my tarot cards from a deck of tarot cards that only I have touched, and I will get the same level of accuracy in those readings. Why? Because they're just cards. Now, when we are doing things like with our tools, our tools for like our athame and our chalice and things like that, we consecrate them because it does set them apart, okay? So it's okay to do that for your deep mind's sake so that it understands when I'm using this, now we're in ceremony. When I'm doing this, we're now in ceremony. That's fine, but it's not because there's some special power in your tool. And that if somebody picks up, this I see this all the time. Oh, don't touch my chalice. Don't touch my athame. If you touch my athame, you're going to discharge it, or you're going to get hexed or something. It's just a knife. It's just a knife. Yes, it's very special to you In your mind, you've done a wonderful job consecrating it. Yes, in your mind, it's great. But at the same time, it has no special power. Nothing. It's just a knife. That table, that altar, it's just a table with a cloth on it. Yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty. That's just a statue. It's not the goddess. Right? That's not the goddess. It's a representation of the goddess, and it's beautiful. And I think it's wonderful to have. But it has no power. Recognize what they are. They're very powerful symbols to your deep mind. They are very powerful symbols that you're respecting. So you're going to respect your symbols, and that's wonderful. So yeah, you might wrap them up. You might treat them well. You might treat them with love. And just because that's showing your deep mind that you mean business. And that's wonderful, and you should do that, and we all do that. But don't confuse it and take it to that superstitious level where you think that there's some sort of special energy that you can direct using your crystal or your stone or your athame or your wand. Okay? It's just a piece of wood. It's just a card. It's just a cloth. It's just a piece of paper with perfume on it, with a design on it, ultimately. There's no special magical power. But what they represent in your mind, that's a different story. There's a lot of magical power there. And that's the whole idea of tools, is that they stimulate those sections of the mind, right? So if you don't treat the symbols with respect on the physical plane, then it's telling your deep mind that this doesn't really do anything or it doesn't mean anything. So yeah, we treat them with respect. We do wrap them up. We do put them away. We do utilize, care with our tools, but we do it in a way that does not foster superstition. The main thing that I want to impart on all of us before we close is that magic is an ancient way of wisdom. And part of that wisdom is in getting results in the physical world to get our needs met. That is part of the way that wisdom is taken care of. But the main function of magic is for our growth as beings, as spiritual beings. And that superstition and fear and commercialism are not part of it. You don't need special products. So, magic is an ancient science. Anything that's superstitious in nature, anything that's fear-based in nature, we want to leave alone. We want to just leave it alone and take things very slowly, one step at a time, and recognize that ultimately it's about training your mind. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. Blessed be.